Good morning, good afternoon, LinkedIn friends, HubSpot Nation. Welcome to a special mini series supporting the sunset of the legacy Shopify to HubSpot integration. We've got a new one in place, and it's changing a lot more than people think. So, talk to Stefan, the Shopify expert that I know, and he's decided to do this series for us. Appreciate you taking the time, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you, Chris, and thank you very much for having me. And yeah, looking forward to talking about this new and exciting integration.
Yeah, let's dive in. I mean, overall, just give us a quick overview, and then we'll get into like establishing roles and like how do you decide. It's coming up more and more as HubSpot like just explodes with their updates, and how do you decide which system's doing what? Because that makes the rest of the conversation go a lot easier. Surprise. But what's different that people really need to be aware of out of the gate?
Sure, absolutely. I think just for kind of some context, so just to give you a background, so I lead a company called Loncar Consulting. We basically specialize for CRM implementations and mostly around data cleanups, reports, data analytics. That's why we work both with companies using CRMs and e-commerce sites, especially Shopify. So that's where our expertise lies. We have customers worldwide, which we are very happy, and I want to shout out. I want to kind of steal a little bit of time for that, but yeah, I think one of our specialities, and I'll lead into now the integration, is doing integrations, and we do everything from custom to setting up the native ones, especially in HubSpot. And for us, seeing that there is this new integration between Shopify and HubSpot was definitely exciting at the beginning, of course. And I think it was very natural when you look at the e-commerce space, especially in e-commerce web dev. Shopify is the first name that should come to mind. Definitely, I think the platform is developing at a very rapid pace, rapid kind of speed, and HubSpot as well in the CRM space. I kind of looking at why did this integration come in place. I understand it because when you look at who's the first email marketing platform, for example, when for a Shopify merchant, that's going to be Klaviyo. And why is it going to be Klaviyo? Because, well, the companies basically grew together in that way. Shopify is owner, or they have a lot of shares in Klaviyo as well. So HubSpot had to in a way parry with that and do as good of an integration as Klaviyo and Shopify have, and they almost have a native one, right? Almost the native server to server side if they don't have it, So I understand why the integration had to be updated. I definitely support that side of things, and I think it's very exciting in what it can offer to users of both HubSpot as a CRM system for marketing and sales and other stuff, and having an e-commerce site on Shopify. So 100% needed, but we can talk about the execution maybe a little bit late.
Yeah, and I'll just share my screen here. So everybody can get eyes on it. And maybe we can walk through a little bit about digging into some of the why. We've got 11,000 installs here. So this is not, it's actually pretty big for such the commerce side of lifecycle, of customer lifecycle. So many of the other integrations that are really well known and cemented in, like our marketing and sales. That's what we always have known HubSpot for, right? And I've got this one, 11,000 installs. There's new syncing. We're switching from deals to orders. Whenever anybody does that contest of like how much open deal pipeline you have or you find in like a messy portal, if somebody has a Shopify integration, they win like every time because you've got this abandoned cart stage with like $1 trillion in it. So this was exciting to see this movement, but switching your data model from deals to orders, is no small feat. And depending on which side you're in, which we're going to talk about a little bit, B2B versus B2C, there's some differences. So understanding that when this was first developed, one of the primary reasons was supporting the marketing side of things, marketing automation in support of abandoned carts and orders, and just that customer retention side of things. So when we talk about it in B2B perspective, you can see some of those gaps still. But as we look at this page, and obviously we're not going to read through it all, but what is it you like about the new integration, and where are the gaps that you see?
Yeah. So I think I'm going to put maybe a controversial one here. I do like that, it's not in deals anymore, that it's going to orders in a way. And I definitely like that on the B2C side of things. I think the migration, what definitely we are seeing with our customers is that they did not see the amount of work that had to be replicated and now changed on a completely different object. That's both in workflows and in reports. There is one disadvantage with this, and it's a big one, because previously what we've always done kind of traditionally is just, create an e-commerce pipeline in the deal, and then it's just one report split by pipeline in order to inspect and analyze the data. Now we have to create two reports, one for orders and one for the rest of the things that are happening for that customer in the pipeline. So that's one of the downsides, but I understand why they put it in the orders. I understand that there is, there's also very good integration, Shopify directly to NetSuite, and for the fulfillment side of things as an ERP system and so on. I think it's great. I think it's quite good, and a lot of bigger Shopify customers out there are using it. Don't forget, NetSuite is a very expensive tool, so that may be accessible to everybody. But I think that's a positive change altogether. And I definitely support it, but of course, in implementing this, it was a difficult one, especially I think for the B2B and B2C brands on Shopify. This was a tricky change, because if they're only one, then very easy, we just say to the B2B customers, so it's not deals anymore, now it's orders. And for the B2C customers, we basically say the same thing. But if it's a mix of them, we are still big advocates on putting the B2B side of things into the deal, because that's more of a, you might want to get some onboarding with that, retailer who in a retailer wholesaler relationship, or you might want to get, an NDA stage or an agreement stage, or, discovery stage side of things. And I don't recommend, having that in the orders, far from it, so that definitely needs to be a deal. How usually we would imagine a normal process is, a deal is created on the wholesale side of things. When it becomes closed won, then it becomes an order. Then it needs to go into the ERP to do some other stuff when it comes to manufacturing and so on. So I would say for the solely B2C or solely B2B customers, it was a natural and easier change than the ones that had the blend, because all of a sudden we had to retrain and re-implement those two areas with the teams. I think another thing that I want to mention here is, it is normal that this happened, because in 24, Shopify has invested a lot and did a lot of features around the B2B side of things, and became really a B2B platform for merchants as well, who want to have that kind of area. So, and it's great. I think it's absolutely great. The first version was okay, the second one better, and so on. So I think it's going to keep on developing that area, and it's a natural. Then the integration with the CRM needs to happen, because let's face it, B2B relationships, even in e-commerce retailer companies, they're quite relationship dependent, and that's where the CRM piece comes in place.
Yeah, and that's a perfect lead into like the main topic for today, which is, oh man, it should be much simpler than it is, man. Like, don't let the systems decide how your process needs to be. Because for me, the difference between orders and deals should be so simple, in that deals are for sales management. If there is no sale to manage, like when people just buy directly from the website, it's an order. And thankfully, we have that's why it's fun to keep track of HubSpot and like in all the different domains, because cash flow is being implemented, and with that comes B2B billing management in a way that forces HubSpot as a whole to get better at revenue reporting, which means we can't just go through the deals anymore. Like, so they're in the process of solving for that. But now that we can do that, it's no longer like, oh, these reports are going to be over here necessarily in Shopify or even in, the NetSuites of the world. And how do you help people like kind of decide, now that there's so much parity of what these systems can do and when and the visibility they can create? How do you help people decide the role of each system in the process?
Slowly. That's my first answer, and a simple one. I think it really comes down to understanding the processes, and that's one of the things, self-served, AI-driven creation of any integrations, or just click here and migrate all of your workflows, which first of all, I don't think the button is that works, and we kind of scrapped that after the first 2 attempts and just started rebuilding them on our own on that side. That's another flaw, I think, of this integration. Personally, that's what I find. But did they test that out? That's a big question. But we've done it for ourselves initially because our site is on Shopify, and we of course have HubSpot as a CRM. And when I just clicked, and we don't have a lot of workflows. We maybe have 3 or 4 workflows that come out of all of that. When I just clicked on migrate, they all failed, and I'm like, they're very, very simplistic workflows. So why didn't this work out? So I definitely recommend, people doing it themselves, apart from maybe some of the things. I don't know, try it, I would say. For some customers, it worked maybe in 50%, for some in 60%, for some it didn't at all. So we had to rebuild it all again. I would say that, coming back to what you were saying around why is this all done, and again, needed, but the execution is a little bit a question mark on my side, and I think it should have been done better. How do we really decide on where a certain system ends? Understanding the process, and we work with some of the customers 3+ years, and you know them, you call them by first name, how the expression goes, and then it's an easy one for us to tell them, okay, you just need to do this and that, and this is where the process stops in Shopify, goes into the CRM, comes back to Shopify if needed, or goes then to the ERP, comes back from the ERP, updates this, update that, so it's great, a lot of work for us, which is great, can't complain for more work, paid work for us, of course. But I think understanding the process is something that you really need a consultant, that you really need somebody, to sit down with you, create process flows and charts and, Canva designs and things like that, to make everybody on the same page and saying, yes, the data is coming in here, going there, updating that, going there, and so on and so on. So that was, I think, for smaller brands using only Shopify and HubSpot, going to be a very simple maybe job, and maybe they can do themselves with a couple of hours of a paid consultant helping out. For the bigger ones, having multiple integrations, firing webhooks, operations hub pro functionality, and things like that, it's a task.
Yeah. Wow, this scoping process, I'm running into it every day at this point. Like whether it's ERP, Shopify, it doesn't matter. There's no easy one. Like zero. Like even the pre-built syncs of the world are not prepared for HubSpot to have orders, for an example. They're not prepared like to basically create one system of truth across different apps, right? Which is what, if we can be honest with ourselves, like why are we even integrating the systems? We're usually trying to make it easier for internal customers or external customers.
Yeah.
Right? Usually both. Right? So which system are those groups interacting with, right? And in general, especially with ERPs, not necessarily Shopify, but when you have customer-facing teams working out of ERPs, it's very hard for them. Their life is hard. Like, they don't like digging for data. They don't like logging into multiple systems. The systems are built for back-end operations, not for, customer communications. So in that case, it's a little easier to make the case for HubSpot being the hub of, customer communications and all of our customer teams working out of there.
Yeah.
Right. But then we know that HubSpot itself doesn't have e-commerce functionality and cart mechanisms. So those front ends, and that's, a lot of the value of Shopify providing that experience to those customers on the outside, that we can't create that experience without a lot of development work, at least on the HubSpot side. So taking it from that perspective of, like, what does your team need to be doing? And if it's communication, like, and it's data management about customers, like unified view of the customer, like
I would say
HubSpot,
that,
right?
yeah. So my answer is yes, and I have a supporting evidence kind of for that. Is there has to be in all the systems, and I think the more that now HubSpot is moving, towards large and enterprise, I think it's very interesting to see that it's a beast of a system now, and in comparison to what it was for a year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I think it's developing so rapidly and in such a positive way in majority of the things, that it's becoming very, very complex. But there, larger customers and even medium and smaller these days, because SaaS is affordable and you have all of these different tools, are going to use those different tools. So they need to communicate with each other. The first thing that we always decide with the customer is, what is the source of truth? So what is the database out of all of your systems that we're going to store all the data, and that is going to override any other data when needed in any syncs and so on? Or who is going to serve as the data lake in a way that we dump all the data and just have it for the sake of it? And for us, it's HubSpot, because creating 100 new properties is not that big of a problem as maybe in some other platforms altogether. So we always like to integrate, whether that's custom, whether that's through the new native app, to put as much as data as possible in HubSpot. So when we did a couple of data syncs between customers and contacts and companies and orders, we've literally, the first thing, we've enabled all Shopify fields sending the data into HubSpot properties, because you never know where they can come good. We just kind of hide them or just put them in a group that we say do not use or something like that, so people know not to use them. But for us, HubSpot is a source of truth. That's what we communicate to our customers, and then with that in mind, we then integrate. So I would say the first step is, what is the source of truth here, and what are we trying to achieve? Sometimes Shopify can be the answer. Don't get me wrong, it can. Especially, I would say, we had a customer that was big in B2C, so like 90% of their revenue B2C and only 10% coming from B2B. So of course, Shopify is a source of truth in that side of things, while HubSpot still remains as a CRM for the managing of wholesale operations. We don't touch that much marketing. They were still using Klaviyo, but another customer used Marketing Pro Hub for it. So they still kept it quite simplistic altogether. But you know how it is with people and change. When something new and shiny comes aboard, they're first very cautious about it, and then we slowly implement it to make it useful.
Yeah, no, I think I like that approach. And that's where I love just talking about HubSpot in terms of communication and relationship management, not just customer relationship management. Because at the end of the day, the way that these systems need to be integrated, like, I think we get stuck in the old IT world of, like, system of truth, source of truth means the data is not in other places, or we don't want it to be in other places. And that's just not real life anymore, right?
No.
And so the way I break it down is, like, we bring that data into HubSpot because our customer teams are generally working out of there, and we need to be able to communicate that data, right, to other people inside and outside of the organization, whether it's marketing automation or order confirmations, right? Having that all in the same system, like, creates a ton of alignment and consistency that the team no longer has to worry about the customers feeling the friction of. And we've got to manage and maintain the data, and we've got to create the data at some point. The 3 buckets I try to help people understand. HubSpot, in this case, is not creating the data. Like, that's being created in Shopify when it comes to orders and carts and things like that. But it doesn't mean it gets to stay over there, right? So like are you finding a lot of, let me just ask that, how easy is it for you to educate people on, HubSpot capabilities outside of marketing automation?
Good question. Depends on the client, depends on the people, depends whether they want to first understand it, depending on, who are we talking about it. I think how it is with every single project and everything, we first have to sell it. We have to sell data cleanup for customers, saying why would that be beneficial for them, right? We have to sell to them, why are we, I don't know, building all our reports on all time, and then they use the date range on the dashboard filters to make it more efficient, so we don't have tons of reports and later they have to buy an add-on of reports, which is God knows how much per month and things like that. So that I think the first thing is we always have to first sell it to them to prove them the value of it. But that's mostly for us with new customers. With old customers, they trust us, and they understand that sometimes they have to bear with us for a week or two in order to see the final product, and then everything kind of makes sense on that side of things. But then again, it comes back to us that we don't sell anything that is not useful. And I'm big on saying to my team, all the test records, delete it. All the reports that you've done just to inspect the data, delete them after you finish your work and things like that. So it's a process, and it's always going to be a process. And I'm a big believer that always a human has to be, in their understanding and reading the body language and things like that, and what they like, what they don't like. But that's more, I would say, everything that I'm describing right now is more, managing of expectations and project management and delivery side of things than anything tangible. But sometimes we just go out there and do it, and we just let the customer know, hey, it's done. And they say, okay, thank you. And that's it. So comes back to the service I think we provide as well on our side.
Yeah, no, I think you make a great point of like slowing down to speed up in terms of helping. Like it is a process. There's never not a process required, when you're trying to help people understand the data model and why things, should be in certain places, especially when, at the heart of it, Shopify is an e-commerce platform. HubSpot is CRM and customer management. So when people come to you thinking there's an easy button, how do you help them like kind of walk back from them? Any specific tips?
First thing, again, depends, but I'll give you, let's say, the common denominator between all of them, right? So the first thing is for us is understanding the problem, right? So we always, every time that they engage with any HubSpot partner or solution provider or consultant or marketing expert, digital marketing expert, any of them, we are first solving a problem, right? That's first part of our work always. And after we solve the problems, then it's about like, what are the questions that you want answering, right? Especially because we do so much in HubSpot reports and dashboards, and we also do something in Power. We also have a service about Power BI, and my data analysts constantly answer questions, right? So that's step number 2. And then step number 3 is optimize, make more efficient, improve, and grow, right? So because when somebody really has a problem that they want fixing, or I don't know, we had a customer recently that did a rebrand, and their question was, very simplistic for me to answer, but for them a nightmare, saying, we changed the domain of our emails. How do we change the users now? Right? That was a question, right? For me, for us, for my team, saying, straight away you need to do this, and that, and this is the price for it, for example. For in that case, it was an easy job, but it was a big problem for them because they were still using their old email domains that they really wanted to rebrand and push this something exciting and new and shiny and so on. So understanding the problem is number 1. Asking them what the questions about their business they want answering, and then the third step for us is always optimize, make more efficient, and grow from it. Sometimes the 2 and 3 replace each other, especially if you're building new automations. If we need, we had a customer recently saying we want to track this certain score, about our business and so on. So we of course had to create an automation that is populating that score based on certain criteria and so on. So it's always a gray area between all of them, but that's, let's say, a linear process that I can give you that I think is common between all of them.
Yeah. And if there's any kind of easy button, it's those questions.
Yeah.
Right. Because what's the very complex button and complicated button is thinking from a workflows perspective, and any kind of tools perspective of, oh no, I have to migrate these workflows, and that's how we're going to approach this problem. Right. And instead, most people get on board with orders as like that's where it's like helping the paradigm shift around what HubSpot's role is first. It goes such a long way because it gets us out of that conversation of where the process should take place based on our previous knowledge of Shopify and HubSpot. Because once you can switch, like if it's like, okay, the process does make sense to switch to orders now, and now we can get rid of half of our workflows, right? There's literally like, so I love focusing on the data model because it can make the most complicated of problems just go away based on like an executive decision to do things in a different way, which is as a consultant and even internal people, that's might be the hardest button, is having those conversations. But that's where, like you said, that the people who have done it 100 times and can speak to it very plainly and simply. Like I remember being on the inside and just watching a consultant come in and do this. And I'm like, I've been saying that like for a year. Like that's just the way it works. And I learned that that was confirmed for me as I started working from the outside. But just that extra perspective, right, of just being able to come in, we're not involved in the day-to-day. We don't have skin in the game of, whether you want the process one way or not, but you have to think through that part instead of the tools. So when I say like, don't let the tools decide what needs to happen, that's kind of the thing I'm talking about.
Yeah, I fully agree. But I also think, putting it all into context, what we are seeing quite a lot, and I think I mentioned this to you. So a lot of HubSpot customers are coming to us that previously, purchased a subscription and have been using it for a couple of years now and so on. Is like, can you help clean up this mess? And the amount of CRMs that we see with, 17 pipelines and 20 plus deal stages and a contact property that should be on the company and then the workflows updating the properties from one level to the other. I'm like, there's this property sync, which is more than a year old now, I think, or something like that. And I think, some of the features that I'm seeing that HubSpot is pushing out these days, I mean, they're great. Absolutely. Again, we spoke about this just before, is, changing the object names. And now all our education clients absolutely love that we can call companies schools. And it's much easier for user adoption. So I absolutely love those. But I also sometimes think that some are just shiny and just like good to haves, but they don't bring any, direct value from that side. So I would say that, great, maybe that helped them get 2, 3, 10 more customers. But in reality is sometimes, moving the data around the system, properly data engineering it, doing proper reports and dashboards, implement those reports and dashboards is a more important work than having this nice and shiny feature that can do one thing that is less than a 0.0001% of your workload a day, so.
Yeah. Oh, you just described parts 2, 3, and 4 of the series, in terms of really digging into. And so I tell people when it comes to like order portals and integrations, like 95% of the work is getting the data model right and the data mapping. And then everything else just gets so easy, including all those extra asks, because we've built the system like on a sustainable foundation of data exists in places where it makes sense, like for data to exist.
Yeah.
Right. So next time, we're going to get into really deals versus orders, because we see it as much as it would be nice to like, choose one and go with it. And maybe B2Cs, have that luxury. All the time we see B2Cs moving towards B2B and we see B2B moving towards B2C. And at the end of the day, they should be treated, those two objects have very different roles, like in terms of most systems. And it's a big habit shift that HubSpot ecosystem needs to make. It's a lot of what the CPQ and the billing management side of things is creating as well. And that we only reported on revenue through deals because that was the only place that we could do it.
Yeah.
Right. So I look forward to diving into that. And then, part 3, we'll talk about integrations. There's so many, speaking of shiny objects, these native integrations, I see it on NetSuite a lot too, that just don't get you all the way there. And, we hear a lot of stories about people trying to plug it in, it's plug and play, and then it's not. And it's not, unfortunately, like the rest of HubSpot, it's not, okay, we'll just add a custom prop. Nope, sometimes you just got to rebuild the whole thing for it to make sense. So we'll help you guys understand when to choose which, and then wrap up the series of part 4 with reporting and dashboards. At the end of the day, that's the most important part for leadership teams to understand and have visibility to how well the business is running, which is always amazing. And maybe you can close on that. Why do teams have such a hard time in terms of, reporting and dashboards when you've come across their challenges?
I think the thing that we're very vocal about is we always speak about systems implementation, but who speaks about reports and dashboards implementation? Yes, we did on average that my team on a daily basis can knock up between 25 to 50 reports, of course, depending on what they are, right? But what's the point of that? What's the point of putting all of those reports together if you didn't sit down with the client, explain them what data they need to see, explain them how they need to bring this up in their Monday, Tuesday, and Friday sales meetings, how they need to read off that data, how need they instruct the team off the back of that data. So the big problem that we are seeing in all the industries, everybody using different systems, is there is no reports and dashboards implementation. You just make a report, you make a dashboard, you send it to your colleague's email with no context, with no comments, with no notes, with no nothing. So one tangible direct tip that I can give to anybody listening to this and struggling to get their team to look at even reports and dashboard, just write a paragraph. Start with a paragraph explaining what the data is in there. What we always do in HubSpot is we use the text, so you can add an image, text, or a video onto a dashboard. We explain what the reports mean, and that one little trick that maybe takes my team, we just put I don't know, if we did a sales activity dashboard for a customer, and we've done calls, and then it was calls made and calls vs outcome, and then we just literally explained call made, the number of calls made in last week, call outcomes, breakdown of calls made in the last week per outcomes. Thank you very much, team. No further questions needed. Done. And that's it. And I'm like, this is great. So context and comments around data help with that, and reports and dashboards implementation. Big advocate for that.
Yeah. Don't assume that the pretty pictures tell the story that you want to tell. And there's no better learning curve for me than working in scientific organizations where there's app scientists and people that just spend their whole life looking at data sets and data modeling. Some of these out of the box stuff that you get from HubSpot look pretty, but it just takes one break, in the dashboard to be like, okay, the whole credibility of the dashboard is gone.
Yeah.
And HubSpot sometimes too, when that happens. So really, I love that, getting clear on the story, and again, slowing down on that part. Because as long as you're answering one question with credibility and you create trust, you don't need to start with a 20 report dashboard. So I look forward to that session with you, because we will have the foundation we need. This is why you don't come in and just start doing reports. I'm always honest with everybody. Reporting and workflows, my weakest links when it comes to HubSpot, because all I do is focus on data. Because if your data model isn't right, like, what are you doing in reports and workflows? You're just making more messes usually. So, well, I appreciate you taking the time to do this series. We know it's needed, and I know a lot of people are gonna get value. And if there's anything else you guys want to know about, the Shopify integration, or just Shopify and HubSpot in general, I know Stefan wouldn't mind hearing from you, and we're happy to help and maybe highlight some of those issues on the upcoming shows. Thanks so much, Stefan.
Cheers. Thank you for having me.
See you next time.